information, and it's my role as medical editor to put that clearly and succinctly for the audience. It is hard to overstate the privilege to be able to film the very first volunteers to receive one of the vaccines during the trials.
It is science we have to thank for giving us this route out of the pandemic.
Coronavirus is going to be with us for years to come.
And also coming up in the programme, as Russia's war on Ukraine enters its third month, the US Secretary of State Antony Blinken is expected in Kyiv, the first top US official to visit since the invasion. Japan says 10 people have died.
Macron and Marine Le Pen, here at least, would be battling for some 50% of the vote. So there is a lot at stake for them here. I should point out Marine Le Pen scored only 7% in that first round, so this is not really her territory in recent years. So that in itself would be regarded by his team as something of a success. As for Marine Le Pen, in similar country up in the north, in the Pas-de-Calais, she's also cast her vote. The expectations would be, certainly from opinion views, which came to dominate certainly more in the second round of campaigning than in the first, and that was the issue of the environment and climate change. And I'm joined now by Lola Vallejo, who works for the Institute for Sustainable Development and
These two politicians in terms of their commitment to climate action, because Emmanuel Macron believes in climate change, has been a leader when Trump was elected, and really gave momentum to international climate action. Domestic large, we still rely hugely on fossil fuels and oil in particular. So this is much a debate that is very current and a challenge for France right now that Emmanuel Macron would still have to tackle in his second term if he wins it.
It's interesting though, it's also a time when I think quite a lot of countries will look
upheaval that we have to do to meet our climate goals. But it's true that it's something where both politicians agree, nuclear industry is a real source of pride for many French people, and the coal can deliver.
There are plenty of climate activists in France, as there are in many parts of Europe, but there is very little what you might call political heft among the ecology parties, the Greens. Why is it that that hasn't taken root more in
left-wing parties that do put climate action at the core have been really battling, and we've seen quite a few candidates who could not agree on a common program, and Mélenchon, who came third, was really the one that carried a lot of this tactical vote.
If that bears out in terms of the way in which the candidates have looked at those topics. Lola, thank you very much indeed for your analysis. It is one of those issues that everyone worries about, but is it top of the priority list? And once again, I think it's true to say in France, cost of living.
David, thanks very much. The US Secretary of State Antony Blinken is due to visit Kyiv later. There are renewed calls for peace talks with Ukraine's president, again asking to meet Vladimir Putin. The United Nations is also stepping.
Their Easter is about a resurgent defence of their country, rising again in resistance to Russian attacks. At least 8 lives were lost yesterday.
Let fury destroy us from within.
Most Ukrainians won't be at home this weekend. Families are scattered and so many people are on the move. Johnson, BBC News, Lviv.
Elsewhere, Japan says the bodies of 10 people have been recovered after their sightseeing boat sank off the northern island of Hokkaido. The search continues for the other passengers, a total of 20.
Appears to capture the vessel as it prepares to leave harbour. One by one, the passengers embark. The boat then gently pushes out to sea. All seemed calm, but one local tour operator warned them not to leave.
It was clear that the conditions at sea would worsen, so I told them not to go, but they did anyway.
The vessel began taking on water near this scenic spot. The rugged coastline for the 26 on board the Kazu-1. They also searched from the air. Some bodies were discovered at sea, others were washed up along the shore. The tourists were visiting one of Japan's most pristine and why their captain didn't heed the warnings about the weather. Michael Bristow, BBC News.
Let's take a brief look at some of the day's other main news now, and the Lebanese authorities say at least 6 migrants have drowned, including a young girl. After Slovenians are voting in a parliamentary election, with the Prime Minister, Janez Janša, and his right-wing SDS party hoping to form a government for the 4th time. He's facing strong opposition from Robert Golob, the leader of the Green centre-left freedom movement.
Now showing on BBC Real.
Of the fact that we all have a responsibility to ourselves as human beings, but perhaps more importantly, we also have a responsibility to, the world around us, the totality of
It hurts to be poor, man. You are taught to become timid and to avoid trouble as like your default set. So they would call me Softy. I was born poor, I grew up poor, single mother, 7 kids. I want better for my country. A country where everyone has a decent shot in life. Doesn't matter if you're
to design a more environmentally friendly building.
Is Kim Jong-un trying to train a young generation of warriors in a new frontier, cyberspace?
Explore new worlds together with podcasts from BBC News World.
Now on BBC World News, Sport Today.
And you can't deny it. I'm the best heavyweight it's ever been.
Beers galore for Bayern as they celebrate a 10th consecutive German Bundesliga title. The best heavyweight boxer of all time after retaining his WBC ring and lineal heavyweight belts at Wembley Stadium in England. Fury beat fellow British boxer Dillian Whyte in front of a capacity crowd at Wembley Stadium. 94,000 people watching that one. It's a post-war British record. The fight only went 6 rounds before Fury knocked his opponent out with an uppercut. The win sets Fury up for a world heavyweight unification bout, which could happen later.
There ain't never been one who could beat me. Because you know why? I'm not just being like confident. 6'9" frame, 270 pound weight, can move like a middleweight, can hit like a thunderstorm, and can take. I will not rule out exhibitions, for sure. I want to have fun. I'm an entertainer. You saw tonight, I entertain. It's what I do best. I'm an entertainer. So I want to have a lot of fun. Big Francis Ngannou was here today. He's on my hit list.
Premier League kicking off later. Liverpool take on local rivals Everton, knowing they've got to get a win to keep up with leaders Manchester City, who are 4 points clear at the top. For Everton, though, it's the other end of the league they're worried about. They're looking over their shoulders at relegation, just 1 point above in charge of Chelsea. But he says the pair have moved on from that incident.
What I know was it was well-meaning at the time, probably just badly, a bit misguided from my point of view. But I've seen lots of managers do that, and when you actually speak
1-0 in that one. Erik ten Hag has said that his focus remains on his current club Ajax, despite being named the incoming Manchester United manager. Ten Hag will join the Premier League side at the end of the season, but wouldn't give an opinion right now, including bottom club Metz against Brest. At the top, Paris Saint-Germain have won a record-equalling 10th French league title with 4 games to spare after a 1-1 draw with 10-man Lens. It's the first title for manager Mauricio Pochettino. League triumph with a 3-1 victory over their bitter rivals Borussia Dortmund. Serge Gnabry put Bayern ahead. Robert Lewandowski adding this second before Jamal Musiala wrapped up a victory late on to seal a first Bundesliga celebrations. Some might call that a waste. It could be a huge day in Italy's Serie A title race with the two of the top three in action on Sunday. Third place Napoli are in action right now. They face Empoli. It was Betis' third Copa del Rey, ending a 17-year wait for a major title for the Seville-based side.
Ever since we left the hotel, I saw it would be difficult to lose this game. The support.
Start his year with his first ATP title of the season on Sunday in front of his home fans. He's in the final of the Serbia Open right now, playing Russian world number 8 Andrei Rublev. Rublev took the first. World number 1, Iga Swiatek, has won her 4th WTA title of the year. She's beaten Arina Sabalenka in the final of the Stuttgart Open. Swiatek winning 6-2, 6-2 in just under an hour and a half. In the NBA, the Utah Jazz secured the tightest of wins to draw level in their series against the Dallas Mavericks. It finished 100 points to 99 in Game 4. Rudy Gobert with this game-sealing win with just 11 seconds on the clock. Dallas did have their star man Luka Doncic back, but his 30 points couldn't help the Mavericks to victory. Game 5 is on Monday in when fans started throwing things at the Cleveland players. It happened after Gleyber Torres clinched the game, winning the single for the Yankees. That put them 5-4 in the lead. Their celebrations were cut short as their fans started throwing beer at Cleveland players who had went to collect the ball.
Hello there. Across central and northern India and Pakistan, we're already seeing temperatures above normal for this stage in April. Even hotter conditions set to come in this week. You can see clear skies for many here. There have been a few storms further south, a few patches of India and also Pakistan. A few storms brewing later in the day and around the Ghats. And as I said, it's western islands of the Maldives most prone to the showers. Southern parts of Sri Lanka could see a storm or two. Northeast India, Bangladesh, drier than we saw through last week, although still the odd
making far feel close, bringing there to here. Turkish Airlines.
From e-commerce, new developments and products to gadgets and games, and for everyone interested in the internet.
In the shadow of Battersea Power Station in London, the future.
Do you want some nitrogen? Can I throw it to you?
Okay, I've got no feet. Yes, throw it to me.
Right, look,
can I catch it? Got it. Okay, well, what am I actually doing with it now?
I don't know, hang on to it, I suppose.
Well, that's why you've given it to me, because you don't know what to do with it.
Experiences that would be impossible to achieve in a real escape room.
Well, it just looks like any landmass with some sea next to it.
Yeah, but there's a long
I
wiggly
don't recognise
bit.
the curve.
There's a long wiggly bit over here, right?
Yeah, although what's funny, of course, is that escape rooms started online.
We looked at a device called the M-Dolores, which is usually used by doctors to see whether patients who are sedated are feeling pain or not.
Yeah, but they've also been conducting other studies using the machine, specifically with kids who have cancer, to find out.
Hello.
Why's that? Well, it's because I'm about to play some video games with them. This here is my new friend, Marco. So how long have you been in the hospital?
I don't understand.
Can I get my Pokemon? Can I show him? You never play? Go for it, man. Check out my Pokemon. Now, we're not just here playing games for the sake of it. Rather, it's said to reduce the pain that these Dolores machine. It monitors a person's autonomic nervous system, which unconsciously regulates body processes such as breathing, blood pressure, and heart rate. So, doctors can, at a glance, see the level of the most popular theories around. There have been various studies over the years looking into the relationship between gaming and pain, and by using this machine, they can objectively say when someone is feeling more or less pain.
Specifically in the parasympathetic system, that it is the responsible of the stress response. So video play is good not only for the psychological aspect, but also
with video games if things don't go my way. But for these kids, not so much. The theory is that adolescent kids can gain more pleasure from video games than any other age range. I imagine he's been in pain. I imagine he's been in pain, but right now, this is all he cares about. Daniel here, for instance, was one of the first trialists and immediately saw the benefits.
Pues la verdad es que no me esperaba para nada que el videojuego pudiera evitar ese dolor, esas horas. El estado de ánimo es distinto a estar tumbado en la cama sin hacer nada.
And it all began when this PSP was handed to a patient, and they similarly noticed how affixed the kid was to it. Now they want to take their findings further.
They're really champions here.
in my opinion, video games can be a part of the non-pharmacological treatment of pain in children with cancer. So this is the absolute demonstration of...
But until then, maybe I'll also do a bit of gaming when I'm not feeling too great.
They're going to judge based on life in America.
My view of feminism is still really the same, which is that I think feminism is fundamentally a justice movement.
There will not be any long-term sustainable peace or stability in Afghanistan.
It's something intangible, something indefinable, dare I say, fluid.
At once, it's a film, music, art, and technology, well, party, really.
It's neat in a world that
storytelling in the future.
Our relationship with reality is fundamentally changing. And because we have these ways that are augmenting or transporting us, and we are actually creating. And that is actually a sort of profound idea when you start to think about that.
Disney's ILM X Lab has been crafting mixed reality experiences to expand its Star Wars and Marvel franchises for years. But now it's focused on bringing the
They want a sense of persistence. They want a sense that, you know, if they have done one thing that another experience knows that they have and that it's somehow enriched. That that we're creating dynamic worlds and that they have a role.
To the theater, you put on a headset instead of driving there.
He's got a Rubik's Cube, he's very happy with that.
You can do things in VR that you could never do in real life. You can make a book turn into a house right in front of your eyes, or travel through time and space into one room to the next. You know,
that literally pay for everything, every dollar, everything. The reason that Netflix and Disney are worth hundreds of billions of dollars is because of the fans that are footing the bills. Our philosophy is that as much as possible, we want to harness and leverage.
The Film Scout app being used at South by Southwest has a rather special shareholder behind the scenes. He is a starship captain, an admiral, and these days he's also an actual spaceman. It's William Shatner. Bill. How hard is it to get a film or a TV series greenlit and commissioned in Hollywood?
It is difficult because when anybody says yes, everybody's job is called Tech War. Some years ago, I directed a pilot film. It's sold as a series. It lasted a year, and now I'm attempting to go with a very well-known animation house.
And with you attached. Wow.
Not just me, but people who are, you know, I mean, it's a whole area that's, some people think they know how to do it, and maybe they do because unknowns. Starting from the beginning, you need the money to make the movie. Now that's where Legion M comes in, because they are now, their basis money. They then have a little tiny partnership in the movie, and they also can express their opinion of the movie, and the movie is being made by supreme professionals being guided by the
to follow the opinion of everyone.
The premise is we don't know better. Who knows better? If 1,000 people say that's funny, and you think that's not funny, you have to think that must be funny, and then you're dead because you don't know. That's the final evolution of me, at any rate. You finally go, oh, I know how to do it. No, I don't. And finally you come to, whether it's sad or glad, fact.
A number of astronauts through this program, they said they saw Earth from up there and it changed them. And I just wondered whether you'd had the same experience.
I was filled with grief because I saw how vulnerable all of this is. Working, I'll go on to this. You ever think about nature doing a display the way people are trying to sell entertaining the vehicles. So nature is saying, all right, let's see, maybe this will go.
I want to hang out with you. Well, from one movie icon to an iconic movie.
So, over the last few weeks, we've been looking at some of the films nominated for Best Visual Effects at this year's Oscars, and this week it is the turn of James Bond.
Now your enemy is my enemy.
His name is Safin.
And what does he want?
Revenge. Me.
The Bond films have a rich heritage of it. So, for instance, in the Norway lake sequence, the production actually went to Norway and they filmed on a real lake, a real frozen lake in Norway. But as with any production, when you shoot throughout the day, the footage looks different from shot to shot. There was kind of one or maybe two in the computer. So rather than, we still used the photography and built on top of it rather than replacing it whole hog, but we used the simulation to tell us what that should look like. The director, Cary Fukunaga, that included the people, that included the buildings, the trees even, but the trees didn't have snow on. So each tree had to be, particularly for the close-up trees, it had to be modelled in CGI to look exactly like the trees that were there. We put snow on them digitally, but then lifted the digital snow off and put them on top of the real trees that were in the plate. We had an amazing special film. No one really wants to resort to CGI stunts and things like that. So they really do capture everything in camera. But when they, for sort of timing reasons, they take a chunk out of the middle of a chase, suddenly the continuity, but it doesn't have the Land Rovers there. So it had a motorbike. So we'll erase the motorbike, but we'll put the Land Rovers in. And that's the kind of work that we are doing. It's not very flashy work to put in the grass. Unless we go to those sort of lengths, you don't end up believing it, and it all feels like a bit of a fudge. And we're not interested in fudging it in 2022.
YouTube, Instagram, Facebook and Twitter at BBC Click.
Thanks for watching. We'll see you soon.
Bye-bye.
And there's more from the Click team at bbc.com/click.
Shortages around the world. So what is happening and what could that mean for you?
We're buying more and more things online, and that means a surge in demand for products made here in Asia. But the world is running out of warehouse space like this.
Manufacturer with production plummeting.
The fragility of the global supply chain has been exposed by a combination of factors, and it's being felt across the world. Is the chain broken forever, or can it be fixed for a more sustainable?
To the west, lots of sunshine. British Columbia, though, sees a return of some rain. A few showers dotted around Mexico, still pretty hot here at the moment. And across other parts of Central America, main focus for storms across parts of Guatemala, El Salvador, through towards Nicaragua and Honduras. Quite stormy mixed in. Some heavier rain further east, especially for Ukraine and southwest Poland. Much of southeast Europe, Balkans, down in towards Greece, looking dry, sunny and pleasantly warm. Monday across in South Africa, still see some rain at times towards parts of KwaZulu-Natal and mainly east. Not many, but through central parts of Saudi Arabia, through towards Kuwait and Iraq. This is where we focus for some storms, turning hotter still across southern parts of the Gulf. And heat continues to build across parts of central northern Pakistan and India this week. We'll see temperatures well above high, as is the case in Beijing. Still a scattering of showers across the rest of central southern China. A few thunderstorms as well through parts of Cambodia, Laos, and the Malay Peninsula looking a little bit stormier, but it's Java, Western Sumatra, where the showers in Indonesia will be most frequent. This week in Italy, but with high pressure in charge, many will stay dry. Bye for now.
When you come to this contemporary period, they are unafraid to address issues such as gender or politics, and very often the works test the boundaries of censorship and control.
There it is.
It's beautiful.
Act of someone laughing. I mean, what I love about when somebody really laughs is the chaos of the features and the abandonment.
This is a magnificent view. The thing to remember about this
Voters in France cast their ballots in the final round of the country's presidential election. Emmanuel Macron looks to extend his premiership. The challenger, Marine Le Pen, seeks to replace the incumbent, but voter turnout so far has been lower off the northern island of Hokkaido after a sightseeing boat went missing on Saturday. Round of voting, the incumbent President Emmanuel Macron is being challenged by the far-right leader Marine Le Pen. Turnout at midday was almost 2 percentage points lower than at the same stage in the last presidential election in 2017. But it was the round of the last election back in 2017. This is Marine Le Pen's third attempt at the presidency, and if she fails, it could potentially be her last. Our Europe correspondent Nick Beak has the latest on the presidential runoff.
Emmanuel Macron disabling women from wearing a headscarf in public. The French aren't exactly thrilled with what's on offer this election. The frustration we found at this market in Paris tells a similar story across the country. Just listen to Patrick, a retired
sensitive policies.
Sarah, who's reluctantly voting for Macron, doesn't trust the polls that are suggesting Le Pen will lose.
I'm still worried because I used to believe Brexit would not happen.
These are radical ideas, particularly at a time when there is war in Europe.
Both candidates have been trying desperately to sell themselves to the undecided millions. Maybe not as their ideal choice, but the best offer.
Do join us for that if you can, as France decides. To other news now, and the US Secretary of State Antony Blinken is due to visit Kyiv later. There are renewed calls for peace talks with Ukraine's president.
But he won't convince Ukrainians he's a man of peace. Their Easter is about a resurgent defence of their country, rising again in resistance to Russian attacks.
All that they have done, our hearts are full of fierce fury. Don't let fury destroy us from within.
Most Ukrainians won't be at home this weekend. Families are protected. Dan Johnson, BBC News, Lviv.
Japan says the bodies of 10 people have been recovered after their sightseeing boat sank off the northern island of Hokkaido. The search continues for the other passengers.
One by one, the passengers embark. The boat then gently pushes out to sea. All seemed calm, but one local tour operator warned them not to leave.
It was clear that
It started to tilt. It's then thought to have sank. The temperature of the water in this part of northern Japan was barely above freezing, making survival difficult. Rescuers scoured the rugged coastline for the 26 navigators will now be asking why their captain didn't heed the warnings about the weather. Michael Bristow, BBC News.
Let's take a brief look at some of the day's other news now. And the Lebanese authorities say at least 6 migrants have drowned. Rescue operations been hampered by a large concentration of flammable methane gas released by the tremor. Slovenians are voting in a parliamentary election with the Prime Minister Janez Janša and his right-wing SDS party hoping to form a government for the 4th time. He's facing strong opposition.
You can see there, and as we go through Sunday night and into Monday, there'll still be a few more showers to come. Now, the showers in the Ghats will move their way westwards. There'll be a few overnight ones in parts of the Maldives, but many eastern parts of the islands should stay dry. But the heat is building. Let's take a look around Pakistan, Turkmenistan and Tajikistan as well. But much of Turkmenistan into Afghanistan will be dry. Dry too through the bulk of India and also Pakistan. A few storms brewing later in the day and around the Ghats. And as I said, it's Western Islands. Take care.
Being at the heart of a live news show is challenging. So when events move quickly, you need to make sure you have the facts, and that's where experience counts. And having a global view gives you
opening of borders, the country's business ambitions, and the impact of the ongoing conflict in Ukraine.
The country's youngest prime minister in over 150 years, the faster, and then the pandemic, all testing the limits of that popularity. An early victory against COVID was short-lived, overwhelmed by the Delta variant, which brought a 3-month lockdown. The next wave, weeks outside Parliament against those mandates. Staying closed off against the world wasn't working. The economy suffered, and New Zealanders' patience with their popular Prime Minister also waned. As the US and Europe made way for that self-imposed pandemic isolation, one of the immediate challenges for the Prime Minister is tackling the rising cost of living.
Welcome to BBC. Health systems come under pressure and devastatingly the loss of lives. So no country has been free of that. But in New Zealand, we deliberately took the approach that we would prioritise the health and well-being of our people and that the best possible health. From the 1st of May, we welcome visa waiver countries back into New Zealand.
Your critics did say at one point that your policies were bumbling. I think another phrase that was used was that your government had been asleep at the wheel. People were angry. There were protests at Parliament.
And that has served us well. As I say, that's led to the fact that we've had some of the lowest death rates in the OECD. And I think ultimately, as I said, for no country did even vaccine programs come without some debate and discussion. But I do
think that people are expressing this unhappiness in New Zealand.
There is huge COVID fatigue. around the world, and you can see that being borne out in many different ways. And so New Zealand is no different. But if the price that we pay for the but we have to ultimately make sure that we've made the right decisions along the way and that we can sleep at night.
You talk about the fatigue that people have had with COVID restrictions, and I'm sure you can understand why people are
who, through this COVID recovery, have felt the impacts of increasing demand during that recovery, the pressure that has created and the supply chain constraints, and of course add to that then the war in Ukraine response. We've immediately tried to cushion the worst of those effects through fuel prices by removing some of the tax for a period of time that New Zealanders feel at the pump. We've brought in a range of supports that we've been taking since 2017. From the moment that we took office, we committed ourselves to bringing in programs like lunches in schools, increasing tax credits for low-income families, raising the minimum wage. All of those things have turned on their head at least another quarter, at least, of potential increases in inflation in New Zealand. And New Zealand is not alone in that. But at the same time, they are predicting to see that stabilise. In the meantime, our job is to try and continue to support New Zealanders as we come through this period that, as I say, other countries, the UK, the USA and others are also experiencing. We are not alone.
I want to talk about China now and the deal that it struck with the Solomon Islands. I know you've the region. What options do you have at this point?
Well, of course, in our region, we take a collaborative approach as a region. In fact, one of the reasons we've expressed this disappointment at the fact that we have seen signed up to explicitly sets an expectation that we look to provide for our own security needs together as a region. And you can see that we have done that. In the Solomons explicitly, Australia and New Zealand both have supports, medical supplies. We simply ask that for security arrangements, we take that same collaborative and collective approach.
Would you consider forging closer links, military links with the US, the way Australia has done, joining AUKUS, for instance?
We have to look to the good that can be gained from greater collaboration in our region. There is need. We work together on those areas of natural mutual interest.
Has this been a sort of wake-up call for you when it comes to
the world is changing around us, and our region is a manifestation of that. And for some time we've also been calling on the United States, the EU and others to ensure that they look to our region as an area where, as I say, we build those economic relations with China. We have a fiercely independent foreign policy, and I'm proud of the position New Zealand takes. Yes, China is a very important trading partner for us, but it's also a mature relationship for us. We have always been consistent. Where there are areas that we can work together, we will.
Is there a diplomatic way out of this conflict?
Well, the only alternative to that is the continued destruction of Ukraine and loss of civilian lives. And so, rightly so, I think the international community continues to invest energy and efforts and invested so heavily in ensuring that we are responding alongside others to the invasion of Ukraine. And the answer for us is simple. When you're a small nation, as we are, you rely on the international world order. You rely on
two sides, as you've described, one that follows the multilateral international order and another that could be defined as autocracies. And it's a choice between democracies and autocracies that countries now need to make.
I think we two differing schisms in the world, and instead actually focus in on the perpetrator of this violence, the perpetrator of the removal of another nation's territorial integrity, and that is at the hands of Russia. Dramatically to ensure that that doesn't grow beyond Russia.
It's often discussed your leadership style, which is seen as quite different from what's on offer today, shall we say. How effective have you found it as a way to govern? And if you can sort of reflect on any of the drawbacks
of that. All I know is that I want to, the best of my ability, model the traits that I consider important enough to teach my own daughter. And when you think about the things that we teach our children, the traits like kindness reflect on the expectations of our political leaders. The character traits we expect are almost the opposite of those we treat our children. We have an expectation around seeing a level of confidence that you would almost describe as arrogant. Empathy is actually how we understand our decisions' impact on our people. And when we start to model those, I hope then that within the public they see a little bit more of themselves, and that perhaps we attract then more people to doesn't mean there's a lot of time for wedding planning or indeed the right weather for an outdoor wedding. So no set date, just intention. And that's, I think, when you live together.
BBC News.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Russian troops retreat from parts of Ukraine. The shocking impact of the invasion is being revealed.
These people have been escaping from cities that have been under Russian bombardment.
The damage here gives a sense of how fierce the fighting has been.
They're still discovering dead bodies.
Towards the Polish forces.
A week of commemorative events in honor of Archbishop Tutu is well underway all over South Africa.
There's more trouble here in the Netherlands. Small groups of people destroying things in the northern city of Groningen.
In global breaking news.
झूलता उछलता है दौड़ता कभी कभी दौड़ कर आता है आगे आगे बढ़ता है इंडिया अमूल दूध पीता.
Vehicle in which people are being creative is not what we should focus on. What we should focus on is the talent and the creativity itself.
Inspiring arts and culture on BBC World News. And there's more culture at bbc.com/culture.
Warm memories wherever you go. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Hello there, let's head down under first of all, and for much of news in the week. It should be dry in Japan on Monday, but it's getting wet in South Korea later in the day. Some wet weather in Shanghai on Monday as well. Ahead of the southwest monsoon, the heat is building in South Asia. It's getting hot and sticky. We've got some storms in the south. Could well get so across North America, heading into Canada. That band of rain could bring some severe storms. The heat is building, though, across southern California. Goodbye.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
To become timid and to avoid trouble as like your default setting. When you see trouble, when you see problems, you run away. I was the softest child or the smallest child, and they thought poor, doesn't matter if you are what tribe or what gender, that you matter to this country. And this country knows that you exist.
For tournament coverage including live text updates, go online or download the app now.
In Myanmar, we go inside the resistance. Our world, Myanmar, inside the resistance on BBC World News.
Next on Hard Talk, my guest is former Russian.
US Secretary of State Antony Blinken is expected in Kyiv, the first top US official to go there since the invasion. Japan says 10 people have died off the northern island of Hokkaido after a sightseeing boat went missing on Saturday. Hello and welcome to the programme. It is crunch time in France as Emmanuel Macron and Marine Le Pen go head-to-head in the battle to become the nation's next president. It is slightly lower than in the 2017 presidential election, when both were in the runoff. At midday, turnout was just over 26%. That's a 15-year low. If Emmanuel Macron wins...
First French president to be re-elected in 20 years. But many voters believe he's failed to deliver on big promises during his first term. Marine Le Pen also wants to make history by becoming the first French woman to be president. Patrick, a retired fireman, and Joël, an office worker, they won't be voting for anyone.
I won't vote for Marine because I hate the far right. But Macron is not that different. He's president of the rich, arrogant, contemptuous.
I don't hate Marine. She's got better, she's calmer, more mature. Her speech is more poised, but I don't agree with her on the more sensitive policies.
France's position in the world. That's because she wants to replace the European Union with something else and to pull out French troops from the NATO military command. These are radical ideas, particularly at a time when there is war in Europe.
Will close in 3 hours' time, just under 3 hours' time, in the major cities. And as before in the first round on April the 10th, the preliminary predictions will be released just a few minutes
Hello there. Across central and northern India and Pakistan, we're already seeing temperatures above normal for this stage in April. Even hotter conditions set to come in this week. You can see clear skies for many here. There have been Central Asia, and whilst it's cooler in parts of Kazakhstan, 15 degrees there in Nur Sultan, the showers and storms have eased for many. Still some around eastern parts of Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Turkmenistan and Tajikistan as well. But much of Turkmenistan into Afghanistan will Wednesday, Thursday, and gets hotter in New Delhi. Temperatures creeping towards the mid-40s through the rest of the week. Take care.
Chill your dill.
Welcome to BBC Podcasts.
That's what you compete for.
What if you could copy the desert's most famous animal to design a more environmentally friendly building?
Is Kim Jong-un trying to train a young generation of warriors in a new frontier?
Are a gift to the city of Edinburgh that has produced so many great writers and so many great pieces of writing. They're just a joyous piece of creative imagining. How many people know who the artist is? I would think possibly. So to see it threatened was a call to action.
Hello, I'm Ross Atkins with Outside Source. This is the extraordinary story of climate change. Vaccines, Europe, the Taliban, Ukraine. Symbolically, it's very important. Let's take this state.
Now, BBC World News follows a fearless man who's fought injustices in his country, Kenya, as a political activist.
Bank says Kenya is growing faster than any other sub-Saharan African nation. But there is one major impediment to the country's continued growth.
Kenya has been ranked dismally as one of the most corrupt countries in the world.
That left more than 1,000 dead and 500,000 homeless.
Despite what happened here today, the organisers of this movement are vowing to fight on. They say this is a battle that goes to the very heart of...
We need to go. Freedom Corner is actually it's an open place for anyone to go. So what do we do? So we go. There'll be violence today. I think it's good for us to get arrested so that the people can know that this government is intolerant.
Burning and violence. My very first photo was a man who was coming home from work, and some people stopped him and asked him, "What tribe are you?" So they can be able to place you tribally. And so the identity in Kenyan politics is not nationalism, patriotism, core values, a bigger vision for a better Kenya. The identity of this country. February 28th, and about 7 or 8 months later, I quit my job. I was like, I can't stand politicians.
When are you going to open this side? I don't know.
I can't protect him.
Kenya's top politicians were targeted by the International Criminal Court, and it ended in another mistrial. Like the president before him on Tuesday, Deputy William Ruto saw the crimes against humanity case.
Smallest child, and they thought I was very weak, so they would call me Softy. I was born poor, I grew up poor, single mother, 7 kids. I want better for my country, that you matter to this country, and this country knows that you exist.
For President Uhuru Kenyatta and his arch political rival Raila Odinga, the August election is a high-stakes rematch.
Raila Odinga, son of the country's first vice
ideals. You're just saying who is the better and nicer thief.
Thank you so much for coming today. Ukweli Party is a new political party that brings, and so we are asking for a ballot revolution.
This is how I'm feeling. Tired, afraid.
We're waiting for you, come on.
So we'll be meeting every day?
Every day, Monday to Friday, every morning, 8 to 10. In fact, I should be leaving now to go to the office. Great guy, but he's easily distracted and he has a lot of things on his mind, so he's not able to plan ahead. So I try and get his phone away from him so that he can concentrate on the planning and forward thinking.
My house was very small,
When my mom was alive, we had a double-decker, so I used to sleep on top, then my mom down here. And then we'd cook outside.
Sina pesa hiyo. Bonfast ni nzuri sana lakini pesa ndio. Pesa na chai. Pesa gani? Pesa.
Kenyans them because whatever they say they might never do, so you can't trust this person.
Mimi naomba tu nafasi niwafanyie kazi. Kazi nitafanya.
And the thing that we're trying to say is all those things can be done, but they wave, they throw t-shirts, they throw a bit of money, and off they go.
Popular musician Charles Njagua Kani alias Jaguar will now fly the Jubilee flag in Starehe constituency during the August elections.
So we have a guy called Jaguar, very
Hamukujali mahali nimetoka, hamukuniuliza hata bibi yangu wako wapi, lakini wakiuliza waambie niko na mabibi wawili.
Mimi nikuja hapa kuomba kura ya ubunge. Ungeniuliza swali ya maana sana. Sera zangu nafanya kazi gani? Hiyo ndio swali ya maana kwa sababu sikiza, juu sera zangu ndio zitawasaidia hapa nyinyi ukiwa hapa. Ukiwa na shida unapigia president au unataka basi unanipigia mimi. Kwa sana. Nidi nakanyamo. Nidi nakanyamo. Nidi na modu. Ngodi kumuhangira.
I launched my book 2 days ago. During my book launch, someone gave a letter to my wife, and she tells me that the letter was a threat.
After receiving death threats that for the first time target his wife and children as well.
Country. It means me die for Kenya to be better for my kids than let that.
You think it will be better if you die?
I don't know. I don't want to die. But if I die and my death changes a few things.
What if it doesn't?
Well, what if it doesn't? Then it was a worse.
Piga kura starehe, tutoe ufisadi starehe, tupate maji nzuri starehe, na Boniface Mwangi, tutetee haki zetu starehe.
Campaigns are funded in Kenya, so he's able to raise about 1.6 million shillings from individual donors, especially small donors.
Usi give up, usiwahi give up on voting. Just vote for the person you trust in. Now one day will change.
In so many ways, Boniface Mwangi is a radical and a maverick, so he pioneers some of these unconventional approaches to organizing, to political expression, to activism.
He just crossed over the 1 million shilling mark.
Okay. If a voter is willing to put his money to a candidate, he's most likely also to put his vote to the same candidate.
Posters and manifesto.
Why was that not in the list of actions?
It's supposed to do
everything has to be on that list. Yeah. If it's not on that list, if it was a kando, we don't know. We can't chase people. So every street, there's photos of ugly.
झूलता उछलता है दौड़ता कभी कभी दौड़ कर आता है आगे आगे बढ़ता है इंडिया अमूल दूध पीता है इंडिया
3 reversing millions of years of rifting, making far feel close, bringing there to here. Turkish Airlines.
Keep on track with the world of athletics on the
technology to be used during the process will not fail.
The success of this whole ballot depends on what happens in this building. The Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, or IEBC, is the arbiter of the whole process.
Is go one-on-one with a man who has moved from being a photojournalist to a political activist, and now he wants to try his hand at politics. Boniface Mwangi.
The news of you now taking a whole new direction, because now you've
me. So what normally happens, if you can't beat them, you join them.
Okay, so she joins you on the streets.
So she comes with me to the streets. Yeah, she's been arrested together with me.
Oh my goodness.
Yes,
that is a strong woman, I must say.
You can see those pictures that have...
Who wears the pants in your home? My wife.
Uko sasa. Njeri, I want to ask you. No, I'm just...
Put words into what you're thinking so that I hear what is on your mind.
Politics. I think I'll be caught up in the whole nonsense in a way that I don't want to be. So, that's why I prefer that you come back.
I want to... This is the first time I think since you came to the US, you've done nothing but talk to me and look at me.
Because normally I'm on my phone.
Or in the dark.
Welcome back. This is our continuing coverage of the breaking news on the shock death of Chris Msando, the data center.
For more than the people who have been identified in that polling station. I don't know if I'm making myself clear.
He was actually murdered, tortured, and killed. In fact, possibly he was also strangled before he was killed.
We're expecting a press conference from NASA in a moment. In the meantime, we want to take the entire speech. We've got reporters there. They did not talk about this breaking news out of the IBC.
Oh my gosh, these guys will do anything, and I don't know who these guys are, but there are people who will do anything. For that guy to have been killed, it's not even how he was found, how his body was found, but for him to have been killed is like sending a warning signal to IEBC officials that there's a way things need to. I think I'm in a bit of a daze. This campaign, my head is buried in one place. I'm
No, not today.
But you're wearing it.
When?
You'll be wearing it.
So once you put it on,
No, but...
Wait, don't say that. Just stand there.
There's nothing to protect my balls.
Wasawa, ndivyo walivyopanga Maulana, deni mulizoacha bado tunalipa, na tumekopa zingine China, tukajenga reli pia barabara, zilizobaki watu wakasanya. Jana tusipoziba ufa tutajenga kuta, tusake zetu tungali vijana.
Dosi aliniambianga freedom never comes for free. We vote tribe, I'm a real cash, ask Boni. Tuna Roma liya mwezi tajezi. traffic madrag mbaendai traffic mandai zina drag god maya mwizi amemake stories za shamba amegrab kono inahonga imevaa bracelet ya colors za flag yeah.
My people, good morning, Naila. Naila. Wakey. Come. This doesn't even have a password, and it's
Tumechidwa kutoka saa 9 usiku, tumepanga raini, hata saa hii hatujaingia ndani.
Violence has broken out in Kenya following yesterday's general
Someone has a copy, but I have it on my phone. But I can give it. You guys, we love you. We love you. You can go to the county commander. We gave him our letter. So you see, madam, put it's too big here. There's no need. There's no need to bigger. There's no need. Madam, there's no need. But they make a pavement. No, we're not with you. Our brothers will be about you. You don't understand that. Easy. Let me tell you. Madam. Shadows on fire.
To work with the government, there must be something at stake for him. It is something we might never understand because we really don't know what were the contents of the agreement between these two individuals. Indeed, Raila's influence seems to have grown as a result of the handshake.
All these politicians are I lost. Yes, lost.
To who?
Jaguar.
So, you didn't win. Oh, Ryan!
Thank you.
Ryan! I'm on your
Next time, yes, next time, mates, next time.
Wait, then next time?
Not because I wanted him to. I honestly, if he had won, it would be great. I'm still hoping that he can be a family man. and I want him home for his children.
Yeah, but maybe there is always a next time, okay? True. We really wanted change, okay? Yes. But it's okay. There will always be a next time. That's good, okay?
Okay.
I'm George.
George
right?
Boniface.
Yes, I know.
Yeah.
Dear Lord. Ampatie hadi asome kavasi na sisi tuko busy wajinga nyenye tuna club.
Warm memories wherever you go.
Hello there, let's head down under first of all, and for much of New Zealand it's going to be dry with some sunshine. We've got some bands of rain heading towards Perth, dropping the temperatures, and this rain is going to push its way into New South Wales later in the week. It should be dry in Japan, also Europe through Iberia, the Mediterranean. It's drier with some sunshine. The rains look like they're further north across Europe. We've got a band of very wet weather actually sweeping through the River Plate into southern parts of Brazil on Monday. Still got some snow across North America heading into Canada.
But whether it's good night or good morning, we're in the midst of another day, which means you're never behind the international headlines. This is Newsday.
For weeks, Volodymyr Zelensky has been leading from the front as Ukraine resists Russia's invasion. Comforting the war's many victims, berating Ukraine's enemies, and demanding more from her allies.
Ми чекаємо рішення, очищення неба, або силою, яка у вас є, або ви дасте нам бойові літаки і засоби.
A former comedian really had what it takes to lead Ukraine.
Hi, Jonah. Hi. Nice to meet you.
I've had a front row seat as Zelensky has gone from a political novice to leading Ukraine's fight for survival against.
This is BBC News. Welcome if you are watching here in the UK or around the globe. I'm Tim Wilcox. Our top stories. Voters in France cast their ballots in the final round of the country's president. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken is expected in Kyiv, the first top US official to visit since the invasion. And Japan says 10 people have died off the northern island of Hokkaido after a sightseeing boat went missing on Saturday. Next president. Polling stations will begin closing in exactly 1 hour from now in rural areas. Those in major cities, they will stay open for an additional hour. Well, first indications are that turnout is slightly lower Palace in 20 years. For Marine Le Pen, this is her third attempt at going for the presidency, and if she fails, it could potentially be her last. Our Europe correspondent Nick Beake has the latest on the presidential runoff in Paris.
By becoming the first French woman to be president, she's tried to present a softer image, but is accused of holding on to racist policies, including banning Muslim women from wearing a headscarf in public. The French aren't exactly thrilled with what's different.
He's president of the rich, arrogant, contemptuous.
I don't hate Marine. She's got better, she's calmer, more mature. Her speech is more poised.
Each time I got up the morning just after and realized it had happened, and it could go the same way in France.
A Le Pen presidency wouldn't just have an impact on communities across this country, it would also change Candidates have been trying desperately to sell themselves to the undecided millions. Maybe not as their ideal choice, but the best offer in front of them.
Well, let's go live now to our correspondent Anna Holligan, who is in the northern town of...
This is a flavour of the passion Marine Le Pen evokes in her constituency. Many people here are struggling with the rising cost of food and fuel, and they feel other politicians aren't aware or just don't care.
Food shopping, basic costs, even petrol is becoming really expensive. So travel to work and for the kids' activities, it all costs a lot.
And what do you think Marine Le Pen will change for you?
When you check your payslip, I say no, we should get more. I'm not sure if Marine Le Pen can do the job, but we could maybe let her.
Two, some believe he needs more time to deliver. Others think Marine Le Pen is simply too much of a risk. Anna Holligan, BBC News, in Beaumont. And even here...
it was a vote against Marine Le Pen. 5 years ago, I was involved with the Macron campaign, but now it has just been a decision.
And Teddy, I know you share Julie's sentiment, actually. You voted for Macron, you told me, but with a broken heart.
I've always been on the far left, politically speaking, so when the second turn came out with what appears to be two choices, the other place in your country, and people moved to communist, to far right, and that was just a vote against something, against the people Arabian or coming from Morocco or coming from Algeria here, and a lot of them are here because we need them in the mine extraction.
Well, there is a lot of expectation and anticipation here. 2 hours to go until we start to get the results in. And there are a lot of people who voted for Marine Le Pen this time round who believe she has done enough to soften her image, to convince the mainstream that she is France's greatest hope. Not long to go now. We will be continuing to cover the reaction as the results come in throughout the night.
Anna, thank you very much indeed. As Anna was saying, we have a special programme starting. State Antony Blinken is due to visit Kyiv today. There are renewed calls for peace talks with Ukraine's president again asking to meet Vladimir Putin. The United Nations is also stepping up its efforts at diplomacy with visits to Moscow and Kyiv this week.
Of their country, rising again in resistance to Russian attacks. At least 8 lives were lost yesterday when an apartment block was hit in Odessa. A 3-month-old baby died here. Most Ukrainians won't be at home this weekend. Families are scattered and so many people are on the move. Not many have made it out of Mariupol, but the evacuation efforts continue. But the prayers across Ukraine are for peace and for more of the weapons they say are needed to protect it. Dan Johnson, BBC News, Lviv.
Well, in the last hour or so, I've been speaking to our correspondent Anna Foster, who is in Lviv, and I asked...
The high-profile visitors are brought in, they have their meetings, they're often taken to various locations, and then it's always after the event that we see those pictures and hear what they had to say, maybe a press conference is held. So the fact that President Zelensky announced this since the war began. President Zelensky has been, as we've heard, he's done it publicly, trying to convince President Biden to come as well. That visit may be a little further down the line. But what President Zelensky will be asking for, and he's been very open like this, is...
Those weapons are coming in from different parts of Europe at the moment. It's interesting, isn't it, seeing which countries are actually supplying some real hardware on the ground and
countries. We heard from the UK just a few days ago that they are going to send their old Challenger 2 tanks to Poland, and then Poland are going to send these T-72s into Ukraine. Very dated Cold War era equipment, really. But what is crucial is that the equipment that they know that they can get their hands on and use straight away is vitally important. And here in Ukraine, all eyes have been on the front line this Easter weekend, on places like Mariupol, on that 500 kilometres or so down the east of the
Hokkaido. Search continues for other passengers. A total of 26 were on board the vessel, which ran into trouble off a peninsula famous for its wildlife and dramatic coastline. Our Asia-Pacific editor Michael Bristow has this report.
Difficult. Rescuers scoured the rugged coastline for the 26 on board the Kazu-1. They also searched from the air. Some bodies were discovered at sea, others were washed up along the shore.
On Friday, Mr Bahari has ordered the security forces to step up operations to close down illegal refineries in the southeast of the country. Nigeria is estimated to lose around 200,000 barrels of crude oil a day to theft from Foreign Secretary. Luke Simmons was 25 years old when he was arrested by Houthis as a suspected spy. His family and friends have been campaigning tirelessly for his release since then. In a statement, the Foreign Secretary said that Mr Simons from thousands of NHS patients. Our science correspondent Richard Westcott has been to a hospital in Cambridge to find out more.
There we go. Who have we got with us today, Aubrey? Who are we cuddling?
2-year-old Aubrey has to do this every week now. Clues as to what's making you ill and how to tackle it. Aubrey's one of more than 100 sick children across the east of England who've had their whole genome read.
Fundamentally, it will result in more children being cured of their disease. The more aggressive lead the most fulfilling lives during their later childhood and into adulthood.
Obviously, finding out she had cancer in the first place was absolutely heartbreaking, but not knowing what type and how to move forward with it, that was a massive struggle as well. So it was, you know, a sort of relief to know what it was, as then we thought, well, okay, they can treat her as best as they can now and get a treatment plan together that's going to work well for her.
So Paul, it changed how they treated her, did it? Finding out exactly what the cancer was?
Yes, yeah, it goes on. Yes, definitely, which was a massive relief.
In a lab around the corner, they've just analysed the genomes of 12,000 NHS cancer patients. It's the biggest study of its kind in the world, and it's produced incredible results, spotting 50 leading the way in the research. How have you found the filming today, Aubrey? What was it like being on? Yeah, about sums it up. Richard Westcott, BBC News, Cambridge.
The Conservative MP Caroline Nokes, who chairs the Commons Women's and Equalities Committee, Labour's Deputy Leader Angela Rayner, tries to put Boris Johnson off his stride by crossing and uncrossing her legs during Prime Minister's questions. Ms Rayner has condemned the claims as vile lies, while the Prime Minister said
politicians and journalists first. And I think what's really interesting here is that actually we have seen a real culture of misogyny in Westminster for a very long time. A lot of us have campaigned against it for a while. And in the past, frank viewers who haven't seen it, this is a really unpleasant attack on Angela Rayner, which basically accused her of trying to use her sexuality to distract the Prime Minister in the House of Commons while she was doing her job, while he was doing his job. I think in the past, some of...
Is this a Westminster problem, or is this an issue with what used to be known as Fleet Street?
Well, sexism and misogyny is something that we all experience, not just in Westminster, not just in Fleet Street. The story has touched a nerve, because it really has touched a nerve. Is I think we're all just sick and tired of a place that feels like a 70s throwback. And while the rest of the country has gone the other way, there's been this massive progressive culture shift. To say I think that's true of all of Fleet Street. And sorry, let's be completely frank. I mean, I think the Mail on Sunday has been a repeat offender. I would just say you started this section by talking about Caroline Nokes, who I respect enormously.
I'm going to have to cut you off because we are out of time, but thank you very much indeed for joining us here on BBC News.
Hello there. Across central and northern India and Pakistan, gas will move their way westwards. There'll be a few overnight ones in parts of the Maldives, but many eastern parts of the islands should stay dry. But the heat is building. Let's take a look around on Monday afternoon. Head further northwards into Central Asia. And whilst it's cooler in parts of Kazakhstan as well, but much of Turkmenistan into Afghanistan will be dry. Dry too through the bulk of India and also Pakistan. A few storms brewing later in the day and around the Ghats. And as I said, it's western islands of the Maldives most prone to the showers. Southern was the mid-40s through the rest of the week. Take care.
वही स्वाद नया अंदाज अमूल चीज ये मेरा चीज है.
For weeks, Volodymyr Zelensky has been leading from the front as Ukraine resists Russia's invasion.
Seat as Zelensky has gone from a political novice to leading Ukraine's fight for survival against Russia.
As Russian troops retreat from parts of Ukraine, /news. Follow the latest on the Russian invasion of Ukraine with BBC News.
In our connected world, all news is international. So,
Talking Business is sponsored by LIC. हर पल आपके साथ.
Hello everyone and welcome to Talking Business Weekly with me, Aaron Hesselhurst. Will those making a stand really make a difference, or is it more symbolic? I'm going to find out just how important these foreign brands are to the Russians and their economy. I'll be discussing all of that with these two experts. One who's been naming and shaming corporate the boss of Ukraine's biggest oil and gas company tells me why current sanctions don't go far enough. But others are choosing to stay put. There are many reasons behind these decisions, but one thing's for sure, the moral compass of business is under the spotlight like never before. Here's the Ukrainian President Zelensky, explaining why to the US Congress.
A single penny that they use to destroy people in Ukraine.
So let's remind ourselves of what's been happening here. Since the beginning of the invasion in late February, Western sanctions have effectively shut Russia out of large, and then investment banks like JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs saying that they would begin winding down their operations in that country. The Russian main street has been transformed with many Western shops mothballed as top brands pull down their shutters. American icons all their Russian shops and website, citing the enormous human suffering and escalating military action in Ukraine. Others, facing a backlash, claim to be unable to pull out due to complex legal agreements, which has left them wrestling with a sort of half since the annexation of Crimea in 2014. The Russian government has responded to this exodus with hostility, threatening to draft a law that would enable them to nationalize the assets of any foreign companies who choose to leave. But companies taking a stance on the issue
issues like the Ukraine-Russian conflict right now, or something as simple as what they're doing in their specific small communities to help that community. It's not just about returns on investment anymore.
For some companies leaving Russia, it's a relatively painless... Jeffrey, a real pleasure having you on the show. Thanks very much for your time. Let's start with this, Jeffrey. So it's you and your team have been compiling this list of companies and their actions over the war in Ukraine. Just explain, how does it work?
We have classes C, D, and F. In the beginning, it was just a binary split of who's curtailing and who's not curtailing. And the reason is because we had so many sleazy pretenders who were coming along and acting like they were doing something, but they really weren't. Brawny towels and Angel Soft toilet tissues, Great Northern toilet tissues and things. But they have some other large divisions, a glass maker and a company that makes little connectors that go into every cell phone and air. One of the largest paper companies in the world. It's based in Russia. Many Chinese companies, such as Huawei, There's noises that Huawei might be changing a little bit soon, but Alibaba and so many others that are in that category.
For companies to withdraw. For instance, some will say they've got these complex legal entanglements. Burger King would be one of those examples.
It's interesting you picked the casual dining restaurants because there's quite a distribution of who's done what in that space. There are places like Starbucks that have the same franchise agreements as anybody else. Starbucks had the courage and the generosity to buy out their vendors, to buy out their franchisees. There's no reason why Burger King or these others couldn't try that.
Jeffrey, some street.
Nobody should hold that position now because our number one enemy to global harmony and the well-being of Ukraine's sovereignty and their right to live is Vladimir Putin. But what a great historian reminds these people, content with jobs and cash and the economy flowing as normal, the less willing they are to question the truth around them.
And Jeffrey, the withdrawal of all of these companies, is it just symbolic, or will it actually happen?
200,000 Russians are now out of work on the street just in Moscow. No, this is very substantive. The stock market has plunged, the currency has plunged. We know that this matters. Inflation is soaring there.
Jeffrey, what's your end goal here?
The hasn't seen somebody who has this amount of power as Putin in a very long time. And the General Mark Milley, who's the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff in the U.S., had said just recently at one of our summits, this is the most dangerous person who ever walked the planet. Maybe surely not as bloody as Hitler or Genghis Khan just yet, but give him time. He has all the capability. And unlike those other horrendous tyrants, they didn't have nuclear weapons. They didn't have the bottomless pit of oil money. So it's critical. His own golden rule, which was never do business where it's the rule of leaders instead of the rule of law.
Jeffrey Sonnenfeld, I really appreciate your time. Thanks very much for joining me, and I'd love to talk to you again.
Stay or do we go? And the vast majority said we go. Now that they've gone, it's a much longer term process of thinking, what are the second and third order effects coming out of the whole Russia-Ukraine war? And keep in mind, this was the first war of the ESG.
I mean, we're talking about an age where environmental, social, and governance standards for companies, right? And they're all very important. Does that have more of an impact, though, on companies' decision over Russia and Ukraine?
Yes, we think it's having a tremendous impact in this outside of Russia, everywhere else in the world.
But as you know, there's always that argument that the first duty of a company is to be profitable, to survive and exist. Anything that deviates from that, that increases costs, etc., isn't going to help.
Result of having to exit from Russia in the wake of the war. But at the same time, those companies made the calculation and said, what's the cost of remaining? And part of that cost would be the idea of being branded and third order effects of big geopolitical dislocations, a la the Russian invasion of Ukraine.
Stephen Fox, a real pleasure having you with me. Thanks for your insights, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
खुश है ये आसमां ज़मीन हर तरफ छाए हैं हम ये ऐसी कूल है अपनी.
Welcome to BBC Podcasts.
Just being on the podium and hearing your national anthem played, that's what you compete for.
What if you could copy the desert's most famous animal to design a more environmentally friendly?
Explore new worlds together with podcasts from BBC News World Service.
Welcome back to Gas. That's Ukraine's largest national and oil gas company, to find out. Yuri, a real pleasure having you on my show. Thanks for your time, and I am sorry it's under these circumstances. But can we start with this, Yuri? Can you just give us an idea of just how bad the ongoing damage is being inflicted?
A part of our business is to transport and to store oil and oil products, and Russians targeted it deliberately. So we had huge explosions we see now in Ukraine, and we operate basically all over Ukraine, and we provide, for example, heating for 90% of Ukrainians, because natural gas is the source of energy. Sometimes investments, sometimes really need to rebuild it from scratch. So it would take years to rebuild the infrastructure that has been damaged recently. An embargo on Russian oil products and gas. But if Germany says that they're so critically dependent on Russian gas, we, by the way, don't believe that's the case. We believe they can to stop the war and not to completely destroy Ukraine and Ukrainian infrastructure.
Yuri, would you go as far as saying that the likes of Germany and other European nations are helping to fund Putin's war in your country?
To kill Ukrainians. So that is why it's of utmost importance to stop this cash flow, to stop Putin, not to make him stronger, a crushing sanction that the West was talking about. So that would stop the war, because Russia will just start running out of money. And they will also see how serious the West. It was Mr. Putin who negotiated on behalf of Gazprom, even though the CEO of Gazprom was in the room. Second, again, Putin was on top of all the details, negotiations from the position of strength, and then you get what you want, because in this particular case, we got what we wanted. So we made him pay, and we made him sign a new transit contract.
Yuri Vatrenko.
LIC हर पल आपके साथ।
शुद्ध दूध में पला कितना लजीज
अमूल चीज, ये मेरा चीज है।
Hello there. In Chile, changing weather patterns caused both by a warming climate and also naturally occurring changes as well are causing big problems in Santiago, in the capital city. In the midst of one of their worst central areas in particular, 300 millimetres of rain possible, maybe a metre's worth of snow for some, and some of that wet weather could just push northwards at times towards Santiago itself. Now, it looks like the greatest chance of rain will be through Monday night and into Tuesday. We could see several millimetres of rain. Every little drop, of course, will be welcome, but then from Wednesday onwards, we're back towards that drier regime. Now, things are set to turn drier in South Africa, also the south, where, of course, we're in the grips of a badly hit drought at the moment too. Now, Australia, rain is also the focus to the north-east of the country, at the moment at least, with moisture coming in off the Tasman Sea. But whilst things turn dry here through the days ahead, we see temperatures widely in the mid to high 40s across parts of northern India, Pakistan and also parts of Afghanistan as well. And through this week ahead, that could have a big impact on infrastructure and also health. Bye for now.
Lucians. Our new website, Future Planet, brings you stories of the people who are working to make the world a sustainable place. And because we're committed to carbon-conscious reporting, we'll work with local reporters from around the globe